All right, what's going on? What's up? This next piece is going to be on opposition analysis. I'm going to begin with a beautiful quote by Sun Tzu in The Art of War. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. And just as in war, we can take a lot of wisdom from the military front. And it's important to not only know ourselves, which much of this, the beginning of this book is about. It's about your divine consciousness, knowing yourself, understanding yourself, knowing your mindset, knowing your values, knowing what you want, knowing your mission. And now it's time to try to understand the enemy, right? And again, a critical component of any game is the presence of some opposing or antagonistic force that is preventing us from accomplishing our mission or making it more difficult. That's the whole point of a game. So this competitive enemy may or may not play by the same rules as us. They have their own objectives that by nature oppose ours. They have their own values, etc., etc. And the enemy is not always just other people. It can also be facts of nature or rules of human behavior that we discussed before, situational or environmental conditions, or numerous other factors. So, like, if your game that you're playing is like mountain climbing, you're not necessarily against other people, you're against the mountain or the nature, stuff like that, right? But there's still some challenge, there's still something making it difficult and making your mission difficult. And how can we utilize this? So what we want to do is develop our strategy that's based on an EMLCOA analysis and an exploitation plan, which we will get into. And I suppose to make this relatable, we will talk about a game. I guess romance. Romance is an interesting one because I just wrote uh, a little short book on that, on the romance game, which the slides are in the my other book, the life system design, the major games, but I wrote it out into a little piece. So the romance game, we'll go with understanding the enemy there. So for men, kind of we orient on the enemy, we orient on women of understand what it's like to be a woman and what women want. So, anyways, orienting on the enemy. So the enemy's most likely course of action. That's what we say when we say EMLCOA. I learned in the Marine Corps. So this is what we predict the enemy's scheme of maneuver is. This is what we predict the enemy will do. And so we have to try to understand what the enemy's mission is, what their purpose is, and how they're gonna do what they do. And we can do this by observing their patterns, their tendencies, and basically try to come up with an idea of what they're gonna do, and then we can counter that. Right. Also, if the enemy is in like a hierarchical organization, like in a military, it always helps to think up a level or two to like not only what your enemy is doing, but like what is their higher up goal as well. Just as a general note, people generally struggle to be random and will often repeat the same methods over and over again, especially if they're working. So when we observe others, we can note whenever we see them doing the same thing over and over again. And likewise, if people are observing us, we can use randomness to our advantage by like doing the same thing a couple times, then switching it up to confuse the enemy. It's all about confusing. That's what I learned from John Boyd. All right. Next, With regards to orienting on the enemy, you come up with an exploitation plan. So you have their EMLCOA, what they're most likely to do. So you get some understanding of that. And then you think about, okay, what is their center of gravity? What is their key strength? What is their strength? Yeah. And then likewise, what is their critical vulnerability or their key weakness? And what we want to do is we don't want to go head on. We want to use our key strength, our center of gravity, against an enemy's critical vulnerability. And again, Sun Tzu has another long quote on this about all warfare being based on deception and confusing the enemy and attacking their critical vulnerability. And so an exploitation plan is just this overall concept of how to leverage and focus on an enemy's weakness. So I guess back to the romance game. What is? I didn't actually think about this. What is the female nature's key strength? I guess their key strength is like their ability to be choosy and picky as the selectors. Critical vulnerability is probably pre-selection. That's interesting. So again, this idea of pre-selection that women specifically, because they're evolved to be more risk averse and more neurotic. That's not a negative term. That's a personality term. Um, if they see a man with other women, then they will assume that she already screened him, and so she doesn't have to do as much work to screen that guy. So they'll find him more attractive already, and it tends to work with women more than the reverse. In fact, most guys don't want to see a girl with a bunch of guys. But so yeah, so pre-selection is one of the big tools that men can use in terms of the romance game. It's surround themselves with women, even if they're not interested in them, because it just helps you with attracting the ones you do want. Interesting. All right. Don't want to get sidetracked there. Lastly, orienting on our greatest enemy, the one within. So, in many cases, as life in general, our greatest competition is really with ourselves. Again, world of simulation, everything external is a reflection of our internal, and you're really against yourself. And so we are all in a perpetual conflict between who we are right now and who we could be. And so sometimes we act more in accordance with our higher self, sometimes we act not so much. We all have the angel and the devil on our shoulders. We are not the highest version of ourselves that we can imagine. We are the lowest version of ourselves that we can accept. This is from Sam Ovens. So we won't do anything to achieve our dreams, but we will fight like hell not to breach our standards. So if we want to achieve our dreams, we must turn them into standards, irrefutable standards. And this is where the numbers come in, because they quantify standards. And the transformation occurs when we turn our character into someone whose default identity can naturally achieve what we want. So what seems like a dream now, for some people that's like going to the gym 3 times a week seems like a dream to be able to have that consistency and discipline. For others, that's a minimum standard for the new character. And what seems very difficult, impossible, or painful will become just the regular habits when we become our new characters. And so it's important, like whatever game that we're playing, whether it's the romance game, the wealth game, specific health game, we understand the rules and the external enemy. Or if it's like basketball, it's an easy example. We understand that there's an external opposition team, but like ultimately you're against yourself, and they're just information, they're just feedback, they're just data for you to keep improving and figure out your weaknesses and grow. Hope that made sense. I really like this piece. I always forget sometimes, not always, but need to integrate this thought process more into my life. So happy to share it. Hope you got something out of that, and I will see you in the next video.